Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 news. Mercedes and Ferrari are bringing upgrades over the coming rounds as they look to try and find a way to challenge McLaren from now to the end of the season. Mercedes have major packages, it seems, over the next 3 Grand Prix weekends. That is better than what Ferrari are cooking up, it seems. They have a new rear suspension on the way, but that will have to wait until Silverstone. Surely that is too little too late. Maybe Mercedes are the only team that could realistically challenge McLaren this year. Very much interested to your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I greatly appreciate it. Plenty to get into today. We're going to start quickly with this. Sergio Perez, we're expecting him to go to Cadillac. That's the big rumour at the moment, but that's not been signed, it doesn't seem. It's not been confirmed yet. There were rumours that this is Sergio Perez to Cadillac, effectively been a done deal for months, which would not massively surprise me, and I still think this is 95% likelihood that's going to happen. But I think Perez is going to get a drive. The question is it going to be Cadillac who probably want him, or is there even another option? There's been some interesting talks that the race talked about today that maybe Perez and Alpine are having conversations. Look, Alpine, what a team, right? They've been in all sorts of drama over the last few days, and we're going to get into some more of it too in a second. Would it make sense for Perez? I mean, I don't think Gasly's going to go anywhere. If Colapinto doesn't work out, they've got Paul Aaron on the sideline still. Of course, they've got Jack Doohan on the sideline still if they wanted him. Perez to Alpine, look, a lot of money. There have been theories that, okay, maybe they've been speaking with Carlos Slim, Perez's key backer, and Flavio Briatore has been saying, okay, maybe we won't sign Perez, but if you want to support another driver from South America, then Colapinto's your man, let's have some money, please. So that might be what's going on here. Time will tell on that. Carlos Sainz Sr., we know that he's going to, it seems at this point, run for the president of the FIA instead of Ben Sulley, and that certainly is his plan. And, well, initially when we discussed this over the last 2 days, the theory has been, okay, maybe he runs, maybe he doesn't. How serious is he taking it? But he's definitely taking it seriously. I mean, his comments here about his son, Carlos Sainz Jr., driving now for Williams, says, obviously, I will have to step down regarding my role with Carlos, my son, and his career, but that's not an issue at all. He's not a child anymore. He's been in Formula 1 for a decade now. We both know that if I go ahead with this project, our relationship will change. The FIA is a very serious entity. There will be no conflict. I also like this, there will be, because, you know, it's pretty emphatic, right? It's not, oh, there would be no conflict or anything. It's like, no, I will get this role and there will be no conflict with my son. That is the theory. Now, Ollie Oakes. This has been a fascinating development over the last few days. We mentioned how Flavio Briatore, presumably knowing that this story was going to become public, made it very clear publicly and to the media that Oakes' resignation was not to do with his relationship with Ollie Oakes or anything to do with the team. It was purely a coincidence that Oakes resigned literally hours before Doohan was fired in favour of Colapinto, benched, let's say, for Doohan because he's still part of the team. Now, that seems like a remarkable coincidence, but it does now seem in hindsight that there is more to this than meets the eye. So we mentioned this over the last couple of days. We now have a few more angles to the story so far. So, Ollie Oakes and his brother William Oakes, involved directors of the high-tech Grand Prix team. They've been involved in many of the junior formulas. Now, Dmitry Mazepin, father, of course, of Nikita Mazepin, who I'm sure you remember very well, has also been involved in high-tech for some time. And we know that with the sanctions placed on the Russian oligarchs, such as Mazepin, that created problems for the team. Because a lot of the Western countries, they don't want money from those guys sloshing around, and therefore, but of course the oligarchs want to find a way to still keep involved in some of their projects. So, you know, certain money laundering or dirty money from some sources may have been coming and going, and the big rumour, of course, of yesterday was that Ollie Oakes has fled. Now, there might be a bit of hyperbole in the term, okay, he fled, you know, did he just leave, possibly? But, you know, the idea is anyway that he's running away from some sort of drama. Now, Ollie Oakes isn't necessarily implicated here, but his brother was arrested with apparently loads of money on him from questionable sources. And, well, the article goes on to describe the relationship with High-Tech and Mazepin in 2016. They signed Mazepin as a driver, the younger Mazepin, and also signed Russian potash fertilizer company Uralkali, of course, who we remember very well indeed for their time with Haas. So, look, Ollie Oakes and Mazepin, there's been a connection there there for some time, and anyway, there's been a feeling that ahead of the 2025 season, Mazepin paid a personal visit to Hollyoaks during Bahrain testing. So yeah, there's more information coming out on this all the time. There was another rumour that the cars, the F2 and F3 cars, have been seized. Now, I don't know where that came from. I don't know if there's any evidence to support this. It's been thrown out there. It's doing the rounds on social media. I've not really seen any evidence of that because, of course, that would be an absolute disaster for their drivers. Hopefully that's not happened. But yeah, that's the latest we have on this. That Oaks' brother has been basically arrested and Mazepin is involved somehow. I don't even know if this involves Briatore. I mean, it's kind of difficult to imagine, like, Briatore is such a questionable character, and all of a sudden you've got Briatore, this Ollie Oaks guy, his brother William, Mazepin somewhere involved. I mean, like, one day without some sort of corruption in Formula 1 is all I'm asking for. But apparently not. Let's talk teams. There have been some testing going on, actually. This, I think, was at Mugello, maybe? I think it was Mugello. This is Zhou doing a bit of testing in an old Ferrari. So it's interesting, yesterday there was testing that Mercedes did, but that was on the wet weather tyres at Silverstone. That was in last year's Mercedes, the W15. Antonelli was there, I think Russell was there as well, doing like 80 or so laps of Silverstone. But the other teams are still running some TPC, now that is testing previous cars. You can't do that with last year's car. It has to be 2 years ago, right? So this McLaren will be, I imagine, the 2023 McLaren, which was still a pretty good machine at the end of the season, to be fair, as we full well know. But yeah, they were doing some testing today with this pretty nice looking thing, actually, with no sponsors on it at all. So Piastri was there, Norris was there. Just very interesting, right, that the teams are still grinding hard with their own drivers. They could put some other driver in the car to, you know, Alex Dunn or something. I think he might have actually been doing some testing anyway for McLaren over the last couple of days. But Norris and Piastri were in Zandvoort, so keep them busy in their weekend off before Imola to do some running. And it seems Piastri in the morning was doing pretty much just long running, and Norris was in the afternoon making a few more harder lap times with the soft tyres on, pushing a little bit more. That was anyway the talking point of yesterday. This is Max Verstappen, or should I say Franz Hermann. So Max is running today, or was running, a Ferrari 296 GT3. Now, he's driven this car before, certainly this type of car before, at the Nürburgring Nordschleife. Now, this is real interesting. The funny thing is, as Toby Gruner from AMUS says, he tried to stay unnoticed using the name Franz Hermann on his car. So this, it seems, is Max's alias that he's going by now. I find this hilarious because Franz Hermann is not an especially Dutch-sounding name with the Dutch flag next to it. So, and also, the idea that Max is trying to be inconspicuous when he's driving this car with a Red Bull livery, Verstappen.com plastered all over it. I know that there are other drivers that drive kind of under this banner, but still, obviously this is going to turn heads, right? You put Franz Hermann on the car all you like. People are going to be looking at the Verstappen liveried Ferrari and wondering who's driving it, especially if he's rather fast. But a couple of things make this very interesting. First of all, the fact that he just had a kid the other week, and people were thinking, oh, maybe after Miami, Max, you know, his daughter's like a week old, he might spend some time with the family, right? But no, this is Max Verstappen we're talking about, or Franz Hermann, should I say, and he's been just cooking up again. He's like, you know what, I'll just head over to Germany, hit the Nordschleife to try and get his license, right? Because he wants to get the license so he can compete at potentially the 24 Hours of Nürburgring going forward. Now, this year's 24 Hours of Nürburgring does not clash with the Formula 1. So it's interesting, right? Because we've talked a lot about Max, what he's going to do next. Is he going to even take a sabbatical from F1? That was a big discussion a couple of weeks ago when there was a rumour that Max isn't really happy with Red Bull, but he's not sure where the best spot would be to go next year because it's so uncertain, which is fair enough. Maybe take a year off, actually do spend some time with your daughter maybe, and drive some other things. We know that endurance racing, Max will definitely do endurance racing in Le Mans at some point. Whether he quits Formula 1 for good before he does it, that's another question entirely. But he's been doing the official testing today and wants to get his special license required for these events so he can do the 24 Hours of Nürburgring. Possibly. He might just be doing it for fun. This is Max. This is what he does for fun. He just drives. But there's an option there. Now, the Nürburgring 24 Hours this year is on the 21st, 22nd of June. That is one weekend after the Grand Prix in Montreal and one weekend before the Grand Prix, I think, in Austria, potentially at the end of June, and then, 2 weeks or whatever before the Silverstone Grand Prix. And we'll get to Silverstone in a second because it might be relevant for Ferrari. Let's do Ferrari. Charles Leclerc, not a very happy man. I mean, it was funny looking at some of the reactions of Hamilton and Leclerc after the Grand Prix, because Hamilton honestly wasn't in terrible spirits. Leclerc, though, looked like a man who has spent 7 years at Ferrari and nothing has changed. It's painful. Unfortunately, it confirms a bit what I was saying yesterday. With a really good lap, we could be in the mix, but that mix was P8. Like, that's as good as the car was capable of. And that's where they were. I mean, the only reason why they both beat Carlos Sainz was because Sainz had damage from his first lap impact with Albon. Otherwise, Sainz would have been further up the road. I mean, they were slower than Williams on pure pace all weekend. That is a tragic circumstance. What are they going to do to fix it? Yesterday, we talked about McLaren's, certainly their rear brake ducts, what they might be playing around with, some theories around phase-changing materials. You guys gave your thoughts on the comments. Now, Auto Racer do a very interesting article today where they describe that, yes, it is indeed the rear cooling of the tyres that is causing a lot of controversy among the teams, and everyone is trying desperately to figure out what's going on. Toto Wolff says, pointing the finger at something illegal is not right. I know the integrity of Stella, Brown, Marshall, and those who work in working. They're just doing a better job than us right now. Of course, maybe a bit of a comment there from Toto towards Christian Horner and Red Bull, because when Red Bull finds something that they don't think looks right or they can't seem to replicate, then you know what they tend to claim most of the time. But yeah, the feeling is it's all about managing the tyres, it's about the rear brake ducts. George Russell's been talking about it, and here's a picture of what they've got going on. I mean, it's actually incredibly complex, isn't it? What McLaren have on the rear brake duct of their car, seemingly more so than what many other teams are cooking up right now. But as I say, we talked about that in depth yesterday. The real question is whether anyone else can do anything about it. The suspicion now becomes certainty for all direct competitors is the team led by Andrea Stella has found the perfect way through the cooling system to let air in to cool the brakes, but also not to overheat the tyres too much, thus trying to have the right temperature to trigger them and guarantee peak grip and a larger window of external temperatures. And that is, look, if you can keep your tyre temperatures in the right spot, that is more critical than any aerodynamic performance, right? So this is the main thing that the other teams have to figure out. There is a feeling that Ferrari are trying. They are making progress on trying to understand what to do at the rear brake ducts to take advantage of what McLaren are currently doing. They also have other plans in the works. But the thing for Ferrari is that many are saying, especially Brake Boosted, who's a long-time suffering Ferrari fan, that maybe this is simply too little too late. A new rear suspension is being developed for Ferrari. They've realised it early in the season, their main weakness on the present car. So it's not all about tyre temperatures, it's just that most teams, they've figured out their suspension because they've been running the same suspension for the last couple of years. Ferrari radically changed all of theirs for this season, which obviously was going to be a risk. Now they're going to try a new rear suspension, but by the time it arrives, it's going to be for Silverstone, which is not great, really. As I say, I think Silverstone is on the 6th of July. Like, we're talking 2 months from now. That's when the rear suspension is going to arrive. By then, the championship is going to be over, right? Like, look, sure, Ferrari can do it, but as Brake Boosted says, why even bother? I mean, okay, maybe it can make their car more of even maybe a race-winning force, but it's probably not going to matter when 2026 surely is so integral. So that's why I'm just a little bit confused by Ferrari's approach. Look, I like a team that's going to push, they're going to try, they believe there's potential in the car, but the car aerodynamically is too sensitive. The thing is, right, that we were expecting Ferrari to bring pretty major upgrades, certainly to Imola. I mean, they've been talking about they had a new floor they were going to bring, and they were delaying the new parts they had until Imola to make sure that they could deploy them properly. And now we're hearing that all they have are like minor upgrades, minor updates in Imola, minor updates in Barcelona, and then 2 months from now they're going to have this major rear suspension change. But let's be real, it's probably going to be too little too late, right, you would imagine. So yeah, I'm not sure what Ferrari are cooking right now. I think, honestly, their time would maybe better be spent just focusing on next year. But look, if the rumours are true that Mercedes have an absolute rocket ship engine, maybe they think focusing on next year is pointless because they're going to lose anyway. I don't know. Speaking of Mercedes, though, last time a new pope was elected, Mercedes started to dominate the following year. So, look, I'll leave it there for now. I'll let you guys make up your minds on that one. The reality, though, is that Mercedes have finally upgrades in the works. They've pretty much done nothing to their car so far this season. McLaren have brought a couple of things here and there. Red Bull have actually brought quite a few things, some of which has worked, some of which hasn't worked as much as they wanted to. But I think many people are looking at the championship and they're saying, okay, let's actually have a look at the championship. This is this year compared to last year. Realistically, McLaren are winning the title, aren't they, right? Like, it's not going to probably go another way. It's not impossible. You know, McLaren made a big comeback last year. I mean, look at McLaren won last year's championship, and at this point last season, they were way behind. So, I mean, look, they were well over 115 points behind. Right now, Mercedes are 105 points behind. But could we imagine a turnaround like that for last year's title is going to happen again? Very, very unlikely. But Red Bull certainly aren't winning the Constructors. They have one driver for various reasons. Ferrari, frankly, are pretty hopeless this season. Unfortunately, Williams have made massive strides, but it's Mercedes, really. And George Russell's not a million miles away in the drivers. It's not great, to be fair. Like, we're talking, 38 points behind. But, you know, there's, 18 rounds left of the season. A couple of sprint races still thrown in. So, look, 38 points is overturnable if Mercedes can deliver a car which is right there very, very quickly. But if anyone's going to do it, it is probably going to be Mercedes. They seem like they've given themselves a much more solid mechanical base this year than they have previously. Sure, on race pace, that's where the rear tyre especially, temperature advantage McLaren seem to currently have is a big deal, and they can look after their tyres far better than Mercedes can. Even in Jeddah, Mercedes were quick, but they were falling away very rapidly at the start of that Grand Prix. So Allison says, we are confident, however, the next 2 or 3 races can change this picture a little. He says there'll be some more obvious upgrades over the next handful of races. Hopefully they'll improve our fortunes. The ones that made it happen over the next 2-3 races, or the ones that happen, right, so the upgrades that happen, will dial a bit for us. We'll also try and continue to work on our tyre temperatures in the race. That will also improve our fortune. And to be fair, while McLaren may have some sort of genius solution at the rear, if your car simply has more performance, then it also means you can look after the tyres better. If, you know, let's say you have insane downforce, then your rear tyres will not be slipping as much, and even if you've not got whatever trickery McLaren may or may not be using, if your car is just aerodynamically better, then even if you don't have, you know, the magic rear brake ducts that McLaren seem to have, maybe you can still replicate a similar thing. Now, is it possible to really beat McLaren? I'm not holding out much hope that we're going to have an interesting Constructors title fight, but Toto says we're working hard to bring updates that will hopefully close the deficit, and the plan is going to be, they have plans for Imola, for Barcelona, and for Montreal. So, I mean, we have Imola, then it's Monaco after that, so they're not going to bring anything there, and understandably so. But Imola, they'll have something. Barcelona, they'll have something. So by the time Montreal comes around in the middle of June, way before Ferrari's big upgrade is planned, Mercedes will have brought some substantial changes to their car. And look, if they really do have the solid mechanical base they think they have, and they can add straight up more performance and maybe find something on the tyre temperatures that they can help control during the race, who knows? Russell and Antonelli may be serious threats for race wins some point very soon this season. So look, Ferrari, as much as it would be nice if they were to be back up there, because frankly we expected this season to be very interesting, mainly because we thought we were going to have at least a 3-way fight between teams, if not potentially a 4-way fight between teams. The reality is we have the McLarens versus Max for now, and even that, Max is struggling to hold on, given that the Red Bull isn't really there on many of these circuits. Mercedes can do it in quali, but not really in the race, and then Ferrari are an absolute disaster. So look, it's not the season we were hoping for really so far in terms of absolute outright warfare at the front of the grid, but if there's any team that can actually give us that, it is probably Mercedes right now. So very much interested to your thoughts on all of this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.